Hi, I'm Ross Schaefer, and today I'm going to be interviewing Jeff Altman. This is from a television show called Offstage with Ross Schaefer. And you know Jeff as a stand-up comedian. He's been in the commercials that you know and love and sitcom stars, including Nurses. But on stage, off stage, he is hysterical. There is nobody you'd rather have as your friend than Jeff Altman.
It's 12 o'clock, it's midnight. She's got a quart of tequila, I got a quart. She turns around, she's just perfect. It's like,
Oh, this has been so much fun. Let's go have some cheesecake and coffee.
I turn around looking like this guy.
Oh my
Jeff,
God.
why don't you sit down there? Look at this. It's all set up here at the legendary Comedy Store.
There it is.
This is the place. Would you just give a little primer to people at home who may not be familiar with this place on Sunset Boulevard? Is there a comic today that hasn't worked this room?
Probably not. Probably not. This was the first place I got up. Not actually this room. This is the main room.
Mm-hmm.
This used to be a rock and roll joint called Art LeBeau's when I came out here back in the mid-'70s. And the original room, which is through those walls there, that we can't see, it's where a lot of people really started doing stand-up, myself included.
Yeah, yourself, David Letterman.
George Miller, Johnny Witherspoon, Arsenio Hall, on and on and on and on.
Yeah, yeah. And it's still a place where you come down and work out material. If you need to.
Oh, it's still a terrific place to do that, absolutely. This room right here probably is one of the 3 or 4 best stand-up rooms in the country.
And what that means is it's hot, right?
It's just, it's got the right amount of people. They can put about 400 people in here packed. The lighting is good. The acoustics are good. The stage is just big enough. It's
nice.
pretty close to being just right.
See, there's no way to be cool and nauseous at the same time. Because you can't fake being sick to your stomach. You can't just all of a sudden turn to your date and go,
No, honey, I feel pretty good. Please help me.
Do people recognize you more from television, the TV shows you've done?
Don't say prison.
Or from stand-up comedy, because you've had Showtime specials, you've been sitcoms, commercials. What is it they come up to you and say they recognize you from?
I don't know. I'm one of the real odd ones in that, I've never had a vehicle.
No, you're odd than that you worked. That's been odd.
Bless my heart.
Yeah.
I've never had a venue or a format that put me on every week for a long time. I had my own show back in 1980.
Which I want to talk about.
The Japanese Girls, and then I was on Nurses a couple years ago. But nothing that was ever tremendously successful that stayed on. And I think that's kind of what you need to kind of stay in front of the people so that when you walk through an airport, everybody will say, oh, there's Jeff Altman. What I get is,
Yeah, isn't that guy in those Pringles commercials?
or they'll say,
Hey, I know you. You're that guy.
I get a lot of that. And then some people will say, I know Jeff. People who watch Letterman and stuff. I have a group of people who do know who I am. But
and you can't smile when you're feeling that sick. Ever try to fake a smile when you're nauseous? You say,
I feel okay.
and you're inappropriately affectionate. You've been with this woman 20 minutes, you're saying things like,
Honey, you look very beautiful. I think I love you. Please help me.
Your testimony that because the way you look, the way you do, the way you act, you can cross all those lines. You can do a commercial for Budweiser, or you can do a sitcom. And you can keep working, which is the big task in this business.
That was my dad's influence. I remember when I came out here right after college, and the last thing he said to me was, his pants were up about here, which was really
If you've
nice.
seen those specials, you know what Jeff does. Is he pulls the pants way up, and this is, look at that, I've set it up like an
Well,
impression.
no, it's true. My dad got older, the pants would keep, by the time he was like 70, he had to pull down his zipper to drive.
I'll sink you like a 3-foot putt, pal. I'll beat you like a rented mule. I ought to knock you.
Please, Daddy, I don't feel good. Please help me.
I'll help you, pal. I'll hit you so hard by the time you stop rolling, your clothes will be out of style, you little rat.
So anyway, the last thing he said to me is that I clearly remember before I left Syracuse, New York, was he looked at me and said, what the hell are you going to do when you get out there? As if it was impossible that I do. So I thought to myself, I'd better do every damn thing I can. You know, I better get myself a commercial agent. I better get this kind of an agent. I better get a manager. I better get, you know, and just try and do anything I can. And so that's kind of how my career's gone. And I don't know whether that was a good decision. I've always worked, but, you know, I still got to get that one big shot.
How long were you in California before you got the big show, Pink Lady and Jeff?
About 4 years.
4 years.
4 years, 4 or 5 years.
How did that come about, and what did it do to your career? That's two big questions.
I was, there was a group of people around this place here. It's funny when you have a camera looking up your nose. Do you see a parrot or an Eskimo in my nose? There was a group of guys around here about 1978 who were had developed the semblance of an act and were starting to get some work. Letterman was one, Leno, of course, Jimmy Walker, George Miller was doing the Tonight Show.
Freddie Prinze.
Freddie Prinze. So the only people who had not been exploited or had a show, and it was Letterman, myself, and so I got a deal with the NBC. Dave got a deal with NBC. And during this deal, they were thinking up some project. So somebody sold Fred Silverman the idea that these two Japanese girls who were in Japan like the Beatles over here, and who had sold $100 million worth of records named Pink Lady, would come over here, do a television show, and become huge stars in America. Coincidentally, the girls were owned by RCA at the time, who also owned NBC. So Fred was sitting in his office and having a steak, and a cocktail, and says, "Well, we get some funny young comer. Who's on the list? Who we got on the list?" "Well, I'll see. I'll start at the top. There's Altman. That's far enough." And bang, they put me in a tuxedo, and here I am with two girls that can't speak English, on my own variety show, and I'm 26 years old. Yeah. Ooh, I just had an accident in this suit.
After that show went off, was it tough to break that or get another shot?
Yeah, because there was nothing about the show that was particularly salvageable. It wasn't a creative success. It certainly wasn't a hit. We were canceled after 5 shows. And so I came off of that, and I don't want to say my career was over, but things were quiet for a while.
Our next guest, I don't know, my guess is he may have fallen on his head as a child because he's just flat out nuts. Ladies and gentlemen, hold on to your wigs and keys. Here he is, Jeff Altman.
Then thank God Dave's show came along at night.
That's right, yeah. You and David Letterman have been friends and have been good for each other's careers over the years.
Well, needless to say...
well, he's needed solid comedians that he could trust and come on and do good shots.
Well, thanks.
And so he'd rely on you. I asked George Miller this question, is that, do some comedians think you get on the show because you're friends with Letterman?
I would think that people who, there's always people who think you'll be playing a date somewhere, you'll be in Reno, and somebody will go, "You are so funny, we love you, we watch you on every," and then there's other guys that walk out going, all right, thinking to themselves, I can do that, Mm-hmm. So, it breaks down to people who think you're funny and like you, and people who don't. And the people who don't, I'm sure they see me on Letterman and say, well, Dave's got his buddy on. Yeah. But then there's a core of people who, who think what I do is funny and silly.
It's always something with you, isn't it, Paco?
Come on. Greg, don't. Now remember what Hank said.
Nurse?
Yes, Your Worship.
Mr. Sternberg in 320 needs 300 milligrams of INH.
Oh, no.
What is it?
With all due respect, because I don't want to make any trouble, and God knows I would never correct you, a great healer.
Wait a minute. Stop questioning me. You have been talked to, pal. Now, you just give him the INH now.
I'm sorry. May I look up at you when I address you? Silly me, it's just a thing, but I had assumed you'd actually read his chart. See, his doctor changed his prescription, seeing the INH was damaging his liver, but you're a doctor, too. What the hell, it's only a liver, I mean, the guy's 74 years old. Maybe he's lived long enough. Your call, okay?
One thing about Jeff that I wanted you to explain to him is that you call talk radio shows in character and torment these poor talk show hosts.
Well, there are any number of tapes that are floating around different circles in show business of strange things. In fact, there's one of Buddy Rich. But I got the idea actually from Letterman. Letterman sent me a tape maybe 4 years ago of him calling the Tom Snyder Show anonymously and putting a Tom on it. It was very funny. So I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice to do a whole album of this? So I started putting together some phone calls. And it's miraculous how very quickly the egos of these talk show hosts will buy into whatever crap you want to sell. This is Ed, and back in Korea they were giving us marijuana and Agent Orange, and it didn't mix well, and a lot of the boys developed bad blisters. And they'll take whatever you say. You can't be too much. You can't get on and say something preposterous, but you try to take the goofiest premise you can and keep the talk show host on that as long as.
And you're very good at putting detail to the story. You'll say, "Oh yeah, I was 17 years old in 1953. I'm 57 now." You put enough.
Yeah, no, you have to add it up. You have to have some legitimacy to the story.
And then there's some other things. You have a great way of listening to Americans talk and picking up little phrases or half words that people use that authenticize the character, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I was shoeing a horse in Chautauqua one night when he double hoofed me right between the eyes. Knocked me cold, but I never left my feet.
What is this fascination you have for mueslicks?
Oh, I like mueslicks. I enjoy a nice big breakfast of mueslicks. I put mueslicks all over my body. Shower in mueslicks. Or muesli.
I don't know. I don't know why. There's something funny about the sound of that word, mueslicks.
Because I heard it in one of your comedy specials.
Yeah. I'm not doing it as much anymore, but I'll have people come up to me sometimes in a club, and they'll have a box of mueslicks there for me, and somebody sitting in the front row.
Hey, how about this?
Yeah, what a nice hook. The other fascination was butt steak.
Oh,
now, how did that come about? And
that came about
for people who don't know what this is. There was one of the Showtime or HBO specials you did was titled that, or it was
sweet and meaty.
That's what it was. Sweet and meaty.
How about some of that butt steak silicone stuff? Let's throw that on there. Hee-hi.
I'm having dinner, not to name drop, but I'm having dinner in New York maybe 7 years ago with Letterman. And you know how a funny word will pop into your head? So we're sitting there eating, and the meal isn't particularly great. And he looks up and he goes, does one of those faces like, And I said, well, we could be out enjoying some nice butt steak. And his face like fell on his food. He just said, butt steak? And I said, oh yes, big and good, sweet and meaty, Daddy. And he says, you got to come on the show tomorrow, because I was in town to do the show. He said, you got to come on the show and do some of that. So we left where we were eating, and we went out to the Improv, one of the few times Dave actually went to a comedy club in New York. And I got on stage and tried to come up with some material that night about butt steak, and then the next night I went on the show and did a little butt steak thing.
Well, it really cracks him up. It's just the way you say it. It's the phrase, whatever
it is. It's a word that just butt steak sounds funny, but it's an actual cut of meat. And some of the finest restaurants in America actually serve as an entree on the menu butt steak. I think Morton's in Chicago, which would be considered one of the finer steakhouses in the world, second listing down, butt steak.
Hi, Daddy, thick and big and sweet.
And I'm not kidding you.
I don't need this, man. I'm in my 30s now, Believe me, I'm realizing, you're mortal. You get into your late 30s, you get mortal. Little things start happening to you. Hair from the top of your head begins to disappear, begins to reappear in your ears. You're standing in line at a bank, just out on your feet, people behind you going, hey, lunch meat, you're next, you're next.
There are more show business stories about things that you've done that have, I think they've gone through the circles of people and got blown way out of proportion. I'm going to ask you about one. At Indianapolis one year, you and Dave Letterman and Johnny Witherspoon were in a restaurant. Did you go into the restaurant and take off into the bathroom, take off all your clothes and greet people?
No, but you're close. We had a habit of, when we would go out, Johnny Witherspoon, George, I can remember years ago, George, Dave, and I going out here in Hollywood and having a meal, and it was just, all three of us were doing funny stuff. But for some reason, two things began to repeat themselves in David Letterman dining experiences. Witherspoon might be there, he might not be there, I might. One would be the yell. And the yell was characterized by who would, in a crowded restaurant, yell the loudest. And I did not win that. Letterman won it. And this is one of the funniest thing I've ever seen him do was this. We're having dinner one night, maybe about 6 years ago in New York, and we're sitting eating, and he says, scream. He looks across and goes, scream. So I wait for the appropriate moment, and I go, right guard. You know, and the restaurant kind of quiets down, and they look around, and okay. 15 minutes later, when just the perfect moment occurs, Dave screams as loud as he can, as if a man had been stabbed in the neck with a knife. Just, ah! Like, I'm not exaggerating. He screamed, ah! In the middle of the meal. The restaurant came to an absolute halt. It sounded like someone had perished, you know? And I'll never forget that as long as I live. He just screamed.
And those of you at the table must have gone nuts.
We just all kept eating, you know. You know how you stifle that smile? You're going, you know? Thought you laughed. Yeah, it was very funny. But I mean, and many times though, I would take my shirt off in the restaurant. And if you know how sometimes restaurants are tiered.
Yes. We're
in a restaurant that's tiered one night, and Dave and I are sitting slightly up above the thing with the tablecloth around the table. So all you can see if you're sitting up is waist up. So I took off my shirt. So it appears to everyone sitting below you that there's a naked man having dinner right above them.
Bring those ladies down here.
I'm talking about it. 32 years old. This woman is like Chuck Yeager. She's on the outside of the envelope, man. It's the middle of the night. She wakes up. She can go forever. It's like, oh, honey, that was wonderful. I'm ready to go again. How about you?
Well, I'm ready too. The problem is I'm numb from here down.
Tell me if you don't agree with this. You can oh sorry. That anticipating going on one of the 4 networks, with your own show seems to be like, you know, boy, my career's over. I'm here. And 3 weeks later, your show is canceled and you're back here at the Comedy Store trying out new jokes. You really have to be prepared to go up and down, and boy, I'm good at that. You really have to have some ability to bounce back, and if you don't, you're dead meat. If your goal, if your happiness is based only about becoming tremendously famous and wealthy, you may have a very unpleasant life. So you have to enjoy the process.
One last piece of advice from Ed to our viewing audience
About
show business, about anything.
If you're going to do a commercial, you should be up on the product. If you're doing for instance, if you're doing tuna fish commercials, you should understand something about the way the fish is caught. If you advertise clothes, you can't have a big giant blubbery butt. You have to look good. You can't have bosoms or nothing like that if you're doing shirt commercials. If you're a man, you have to be ready for the product you're advertising. And that's what I feel. I'm ready now to do some sort of, I don't know, passed out beer commercial of some sort.
Jeff, thank you very much.
Always good to see you. You should come down here more. We miss you.
I know. I'd like to.
We miss you.